Yum. Outrun.
Yum. Vaporwave.
Hey,
You got your outrun in my vaporwave.
You got your vaporwave in my outrun.
What?
Ah yes, it's an all too common problem that has stoked the fire of many tedious debates on the Vaporwave subreddit. In fact, if you go on the street and ask any average Joe what they think the difference between Vaporwave and Outrun is, they'll tell you.
Why are you recording me?
However, I have a personality that can only be described as exhausting, so sit back and get ready to be lectured because I have two amazing games that, while similar in gameplay, are perfect at illustrating the difference between these two aesthetic styles. This episode, we review Cyberhook and Verlet Swing. Max Head Reviews. So for these two games, they basically share the same gameplay mechanic. It's at its core, you're basically just living a Second Life fantasy as Spider-Man in the liminal universe. And we're going to begin where I began, and that's with Verlet Swing. Now the name catches me because swing? Sure. Verlet? No clue. Okay, it was frequently used to calculate trajectories of particles in molecular dynamics, simulations, and computers. Still no clue. However, Nintendo describes the game by calling it an abstract gauntlet. I appreciate all parties not holding back on that GRE vocabulary, and finally justifying my purchase of this dictionary. And they're right. When they describe it, it's an impressive set of precipices and edifices in a labyrinthian arrangement in which the player propels themselves at terminal velocity toward the vortex at the end. Or simply put, you start the game in the middle of some swing action shooting rope, ladies. From structure to structure, using game physics to increase your speed and transport you to the portal at the end of the stage. Yeah, it's a physics game, and a good one at that. I feel in control of my own movement in most instances, and those when I don't is probably human error that my ego refuses to acknowledge. The control scheme is simple. Now, I played the version available on the Switch, so it's simply the A button and the left stick. I love the Pro Controller, but it begs the question, why'd I pay extra for all these buttons? Now, before I begin to compare these two games, let me preface by saying that I'm glad I played Verlet Swing before moving on to Cyberhook. Verlet gave me the opportunity to play a more simplified web-slinging experience as something that felt like a minimal viable product by a team of indie devs that was straightforward and enjoyable. So when Andy read this part of the script, he asked me to expound further on Verlet Swing because I wrote a lot about Cyberhook. But the truth is, Verlet Swing is not meaty at all. I mean, the music is like a simple 9 tracks that gets like repeated over and over again for like 100 levels. I might have that number wrong, but come on, it's the same shit the whole time. The controls are pretty simplistic. There's only so much I can keep saying about it being aesthetic, and it's just straightforward web slinging action. And with that being said, Cyberhook is far more robust. The whole time, you're pulling a distracted boyfriend. You're holding Verlet Swing's hand, but you are looking at Cyberhook. So let's take a look. Cyberhook. Now that's two words I do understand, and there's something about that primary word that grabs my attention every time. Cyber. It pleases my auditory palate. Cyberspace. Cybertron. Cybernator. J-pop group Cyber. And the most used phrase of the 90s? ASL Want a Cyber? Cyberhook delivers more of the same conceptually, but expands upon Verlet's gameplay in such a meaty way. This includes the ability to bullet time, shoot lasers to activate switches and remove barriers, and a magnetic hand that allows you to grab onto the sides of certain structures. All of these additions are great, but in contrast, the Verlet Swing requires more buttons. But as I was using an Xbox controller on my PC, I found that I couldn't remap the keys to my liking for my controller. Changing configurations was only for keyboards, and that definitely created some frustrations at certain points of my experience. A primary example being that the bullet time was double mapped, inconveniently being activated when pressing the joystick, which is bound to happen accidentally as you swing and maneuver through levels precisely and at top speeds.
Oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god, fuck you, the button. God, I fucking hate that button. God, I fucking hate that button.
Oh, but one important thing that I cannot omit, holy smokes, you get a body. Don't believe me? Here's some hands. It didn't occur to me as I played Verlet Swing, but the moment Cyberhook threw in the corporeal experience of being able to run and jump, something might have been missing. Having a body that consists of more than a string, Cyberhook expands on the freedom of movement absent from Verlet Swing. In fact, it allows us to interact with the surfaces without being destroyed by them. And in this regard, Cyberhook does not kill the player off simply by hitting the sides of structures or falling to one's doom, but incorporates architectural design that expands on the types of movement you can do. You know, I said that Cyberhook was a complete package, and what game is complete without a storyline? Because the whole time I was going Mach 2 and bullet timing hook shots across time and space, this one thought was searing into the back of my brain like a hot iron on a bull's ass. Yes, I'm swinging, but what is the why of my swing? What's Homeboy's motivation? Is he growing from this arc? In fact, I refuse to hook any cyber until I have some answers, which Tron Bimo delivers as he rushes over to inform you that I don't care. I don't care what the story is, and quite honestly, I don't care to tell you. And you won't care either. In fact, if I were to tell you, it would be an inconsiderate exhaustion of your time. This is a place of manners, and I'm not going to do that to you. Needless to say that the story is inconsequential to anything that happens in the game, and it does not enhance your gameplay in any way. Pick a way, and that ain't it. A for effort, D gap in execution. Neither of these games needed a storyline, and much like me going on about this point, it's superfluous. The game gives you what it needs to be fun at the very beginning. Swinging through shit fast. I guess we're back with a haircut update. So the whole system needed to crash because it was relying upon an update for my hair. Fucking Windows, man. Anyway, when I picked up these games, I was mostly looking to play for the fun of exploring and getting through each level. I wasn't so concerned on tweaking my time trial runs or anything like that because at the end of the day, I'm a filthy casual. However, it slowly dawned on me that the true nature of the game was speedrunning, which for Verlet Swing especially, just getting through certain levels was the challenge itself, let alone thinking about doing it fast. So the idea of repetitively speedrunning already completed levels, tediously having to shave off second after second with each replay, especially levels I wanted to ghost like a bad OkCupid date, well, it left me with an irrational resentment of the game's creators. And though I fantasized scenarios where I was breaking some of their irreplaceable cherished items, I soon realized why my family might have been right in suggesting anger management classes. Having a moment to breathe and pick back up these levels, I actually found myself enjoying the challenges. Well, most of the time.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I fucking hate that button!
And while not every level is a banger, surprisingly you can find yourself actively engrossed in even the more mediocre levels as you quickly become enraptured to hit your time goals. More so in Cyberhook than Verlet in my opinion, but don't sleep on trying to beat your own times, because yeah, that's the game. Now that I've gotten a thorough review of each of the games out of the way, let's talk about what Vaporwave really boils down to: aesthetics.
And now, our feature presentation.
I think it's important to ask the question, what makes a game Vaporwave really? Because Vaporwave is a movement made of many different elements, like its art for example, just as much as it is comprised of music. Broken Reality served as the paragon, utilizing music, visuals, and especially themes that made it into a complete package. For Verlet Swing, there might be one track of music that feels like true Vaporwave. There's still no story, ergo no themes, so it really is just the visuals. And even those aren't consistent throughout the game. But let's talk about how I came across the game in the first place. As I was sifting through the Nintendo Switch store online, the cover art of Verlet Swing caught my eye. I immediately recognized it as Vaporwave. Right off the bat, they get it right with the glitchy text in the kanji, that soft blue and pink pastel that pours onto the scenery. There's pillars, palms, floppy disks, arcade cabinets, and even statues. But let's focus on the statues. Because one seems Roman at a quick glance, but not, and the others are Easter Island. This is a small tweak I appreciate because it's a small evolution in the DNA of aesthetics. I like there being things that can expand the idea of what is Vaporwave. Now that's only the cover art, so how does it deliver on that promise? Certainly at the start there are stages dripping in definitive aesthetic. Roman columns, neon palms, dolphins, koi fish, a glitchy scream when you die. Oh, and gears. What? Does that seem odd to you? Now just close your eyes and tell me you don't think of the inside of a clock as you hum along with the Macintosh Plus. Yeah, the game tends to deviate as it progresses. At various points you'll find yourself lost in what feels like another game. It's pretty disorienting to find yourself hopping a ride between koi fish and beach balls one moment, then for some reason you're speeding through the garbage disposal of a Chuck E. Cheese. Or you'll be spiraling through the 9 layers of hell like you're in Dante's Inferno. These images don't scream aesthetic, Instead, they read more like I'm doing my English homework in the school lunchroom. Now, I wouldn't want to insult the intelligence of the developers, which is perhaps ironically something somebody would say right as they aim a pretty condescending rant towards them. But if we could, I'd like to take a sidestep and maybe help explain to you guys what Vaporwave is.
Trigger warning. Pretentious pros ahead.
Vaporwave is consumerism. It's the post-economic miracle of Japan in the 1980s. It's the familiar atmospheric sounds of capitalism that permeate malls and elevators. It's the feeling of a midnight loneliness from the top levels of an opulent private suite overlooking a decadent city. It's the world the commercials sold us, the future that never came, and nostalgia for a time that never was. And for some reason, statues. By the way, I'd highly recommend watching What Exactly is Vaporwave by Asian Theory. That channel does a great job of capturing it. So yes, Vaporwave does have some very overt and obvious capitalistic themes to it. However, when I put all that together, it sounded nice as a chunk, but it leaves out some of the other things that I think make Vaporwave very Vaporwave, such as how it covers the Wild West days of the early internet and the design gore of nascent web pages and early 3D graphics. And it's a culture that encourages borrowing. Steal like an artist, you know? I didn't know exactly where to shoehorn that in, but I guess we're all learning that that's right here. And Verlet Swing does at least capture some of that. Some of the generic asset choices I can get behind, you know, like all the pizza, burgers, Frosties, meatballs, etc. Cheesy stock CGI has a place in Vaporwave, looking like Beyond the Mind's Eye by Jan Hammer. But what might be importantly lacking is associating it with a recognizable brand. Like here, we could use a McDonald's or Pizza Hut logo. Now, I understand that this is an indie studio and they can't afford a lawsuit, but you could go the broken reality path and make a parody logo. It's just as effective and could really tie in new or different imagery so long as it seemed to tie into an overall Vaporwave theme, thereby creating a mood. For as much as we can shit on capitalism, it is the gift that keeps on giving. And by giving, I mean giving wealth to the billionaires, poverty to the working class, and more plastic than the ocean can swallow. But in all of that, they do keep shoving brands down our throat. There's no shortage of material goods, necessary or not. So just link it back to our boring dystopian overlords. Show us that saucy nihilism. Verlet does inevitably fall into the Outrun hole. I mean, you know, it's their game, they got 100 levels, they might have spread it thin, but also, if this wasn't intentional design, then it's their game to do so. This is where it shares similarities with Cyberhook, which is no doubt Outrun through and through. So having gone over what is Vaporwave, why don't we put these two games side by side so that we can explain what is not Vaporwave? Well, wait, no, well, kinda. I mean, we're just gonna explain Outrun.
Warning, more pretentious pros ahead.
Outrun is a fondness of the 80s, DeLoreans racing on neon grids through the moonbeams of a polished Miami skyline. Darker color palettes surrounding a striated sun that shimmers with a geometric pleasantry. It's the fondness of Nagel, the polish of hyper-stylized glossy fonts. And whereas Vaporwave's aesthetic of tech was what Windows 95 actually was, Outrun's tech style is what the 80s imagined what they thought it would be. And even then, it's rarely the focus, as PC culture was relegated to a very small niche. Because, circling back to the fondness of 80s culture, it's a love for style that spawned from its movies, life reflecting the art that created 80s fashion and style. And in the case of Cyberhook, and pretty much any other Synthwave game, it's Tron. Tron clone after Tron clone. By the way, check out Pink's video on the difference between Outrun and Vaporwave for a deeper comparison. And beyond that, how else could I describe Cyberhook? I say Tron, and you know exactly what I mean. It is definitively one look throughout the entire game. Primitive vector graphics filled in with the dark-toned colors outlined in neon over a grid that hangs in liminal space. That's Cyberhook. And in Verlet Swing's Outrun stages, it has much of the same base, but using more stock assets. To their credit, Vaporwave elements do appear alongside the Outrun style. Floppy disks, computer monitors, geometric shapes like the ones you saw in your 7th grade math book, the stuff is there. Oh, and don't forget useless math. What the hell is up with Vaporwave games throwing tedious problems at you? Just like in Broken Reality where they throw a math challenge, Verlet gave us another annoying, albeit simple, equation. If you dare attempt to throw any more education into my video games, I'm going to make sure your publishing company gets hate mail in the form of shit-smeared Rand McNally textbook. You've been warned. The music track underlying Verlet's Outrun levels is much more like the consistent underlying synthwave that hums throughout Cyberhook. In this regard, Verlet more completely fills out its Outrun stages than it does on its Vaporwave ones. So the question really comes back to, is Verlet Swing really a Vaporwave game? It's not if you're a purist, but considering the dearth of games that would match the criteria that makes a pure Vaporwave game versus the amount of games that have some Vaporwave levels to them, well, I'm willing to bend on that. Maybe it's not a Vaporwave game as a whole, but it does capture enough of the aesthetic that it's in the game's DNA. The publishers clearly wanted that look and chose to define it as such through its branding. They made many clear choices that are undeniably in the vein of Vaporwave. So yeah, I'm gonna count it. And that's where I'm gonna round it off, friends. All in all, Verlet Swing as the minimalist experience is quick to pick up, straight to action, and has good progression which challenges you to the end through a modest gameplay experience. However, Cyberhook seems to envelop Verlet, not only having the same foundation, but expanding on the base game. It rounds out feeling like a much more complete game. And it is perhaps that last sentence that is the greatest metaphor that can be laid out between the Vaporwave and Outrun experience. Outrun as an aesthetic feels more complete, more defined. It knows exactly what it is. And not that Vaporwave doesn't, but it can often be confused and overlap, if superficially, with the Outrun style. Like Verlet Swing, Vaporwave can sometimes feel like a growing pain transitioning to a more complete phase of life. Vaporwave could do more to distinguish itself, if not by what already exists, then by the denizens of its culture. We don't need to arm the gates and dismiss people from entering. Rather, make a concerted effort to push the distinctions more, expand the properties tied to the movement. Vaporwave is an art movement driven by a music scene. That cornerstone can only hold so much weight, so it's up to the creators of other mediums within the genre to alleviate that stress. Don't just rely on the hits. Create more new hits by pushing boundaries. And I see so many people get keyed up when the sauces get mixed. Like Pinkus says in his video, there's a lot of cross-posting in the subreddits that makes people razzed, and then the shit-talking tribalism begins. But look, as a sad boy myself, let me be the first to break bread and cry out to my brethren that Synthwave is not an enemy or a rival, rather a sibling to be loved. They share genes, and blood is thicker than water after all. They're both games I recommend playing. Now, truth be told, I ended up liking Cyberhook more. However, I may actually recommend the experience I had, where I started with Verlet Swing, had my fun with that before moving on to Cyberhook, where I had the feeling I was playing a well-upgraded, finer-tuned sequel. It does give you more of the same, so if you're looking for that reskinned, repackaged experience to make things fresh to continue your unparalleled excitement for web slinging, then that's the route for you. Now, if you're looking to cut the fat and jump right back into your back catalog of unplayed games, well, undoubtedly you should go with Cyberhook. Jump into that first, because it's the crunch wrap supreme of the two. Fully loaded, baby. And it'll also give you gas. End of program.